Welcome to Paradigm Shift. Starting now.
Target is inbound, sir. We have confirmed contact.
I want every division on high alert immediately. Do you understand me? Immediately!
Francis Gary Powers was a 30-year-old CIA pilot, and in his eyes, he was just a man flying an airplane. But, as you'll see, his flight path placed him directly at the dead center of a superpower collision. Section 1. The Unseen Spy Aircraft. Okay, so in the late 1950s, both of these superpowers were absolutely paralyzed by nuclear paranoia. I mean, they desperately needed to know what the other guy was up to. In 1955, U.S. President Eisenhower proposed something called the Open Skies Policy. Basically, this was a plan allowing the U.S. and the USSR to do mutual aerial reconnaissance over each other's territories. The goal? Openly monitor nuclear facilities and, de-escalate the chance of an all-out war. But Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev gave it a hard pass. He completely refused the proposal. And actually, it was that absolute rejection that directly pushed Washington to authorize the development of a highly secretive spy plane. By the CIA, this thing was designed to fly at altitudes that made it virtually a ghost. Seriously, it was supposedly impossible to detect or shoot down. Its very first mission over Moscow and Leningrad happened on July 4th, 1956. Strategic and technological advantage with this subsonic aircraft, and so they kept flying many more of these overflight missions in the years that followed. But as we know, technology rarely stays a secret forever, which brings us to Section 2, May Day Interception, the ghost plane on Soviet radar. Picture this. It's May 1st, 1960. Everyone is out for the traditional May parade in Moscow. But behind the scenes, a total crisis is unfolding. At daybreak, Powers takes off from Pakistan. He thinks he's completely undetectable. But by dawn, Soviet radar instantly picks up his aircraft the second it crosses the border. The alarm bells ring. By morning, an unarmed Sukhoi Su-9 interceptor is ordered to do whatever it takes to stop it. They even ordered the pilot to literally ram the U-2. The Su-9 misses, and finally, by mid-morning, as Powers enters the airspace near Sverdlovsk, an S-57 surface-to-air missile strikes the U-2. The missile strike was incredibly chaotic and lethal. Powers somehow managed to free himself from his disintegrating cockpit and parachuted safely to the ground. But the tragedy of the morning just compounded. A Soviet MiG-19 that had also been pursuing the U-2 was accidentally shot down by their own missile batteries. The pilot, Sergei Safronov, was killed. It's a pretty stark, terrifying reminder of the lethal confusion that happens when the fog of war sets in. So Powers survived the fall, only to immediately face a new nightmare. 61. He spent 61 days under intense, incredibly strict interrogation by the KGB. Following this harrowing period of isolation and severe scrutiny, he was handed a 10-year sentence for crimes of espionage. Section 3. The Diplomatic Fallout. A cover-up exposed. Washington was scrambling to manage the crisis, but they had one massive, fatal blind spot. They had absolutely no idea Powers was alive. So the U.S. releases this official cover story. They claim a NASA weather flight had just gone off course and that the pilot simply blacked out due to an oxygen fault. But Khrushchev? He played it perfectly. He just waited. He let the Americans lie to the entire world. And then he dropped the reality check. The Soviets had the wreckage, they had the espionage equipment, and most importantly, they had a living CIA pilot. The U.S. was caught spying, they were caught lying, and their moral standing took a massive, massive hit on the world stage. And you know what? The timing literally could not have been worse. Global leaders were just about to convene at the Four-Power Paris Summit to discuss some truly monumental issues. We're talking the Test Ban Treaty to prevent irradiating the globe, stopping the mass defections happening in East Berlin, and dealing with the brand new communist regime in Cuba. All of these huge global turning points were suddenly hanging by a thread because of this one plane. Holding all the diplomatic cards, Khrushchev issued a very strict three-step ultimatum to President Eisenhower if he wanted the summit to even happen. Step 1, the U.S. president had to openly ask for forgiveness for the incident. Step 2, the responsible persons in charge had to be punished. And Step 3, all future flights over Soviet territory had to completely cease. Eisenhower had to make a really calculated decision here. He conceded to halt the flights. So that's step 3 done. But he absolutely refused to apologize or to punish his officials. And with that impasse, the Paris summit was officially doomed. No agreement was reached on Berlin, Cuba, or nuclear testing. Decades of incredibly delicate bridge-building efforts between the East and West were basically shattered in an instant. Section 4. The Peshawar Connection. Expanding the Cold War crosshairs. Remember where that doomed flight actually originated? Pakistan. Almost immediately after the shootdown, Khrushchev confronted the Pakistani ambassador. Just picture this scene. Khrushchev tells the ambassador that he personally looked at a map, one that specifically accorded with Pakistan's official sovereign boundaries, by the way, and he took a red marker and circled the city of Peshawar and the Bada Bear base. It was a very intense, deeply personal focus on the exact launch point of that U-2. And then he delivered this chilling quote. "Gentlemen, don't play with fire." The geopolitical pressure placed on Pakistan by the Soviet leadership in that specific moment was severe. The threat was crystal clear. Allow these spy flights to continue from your soil, and you will face the full wrath of the Soviet military. Despite having a secret agreement with the US, Pakistan was facing immense global scrutiny and direct, scary Soviet threats. So they reneged. They officially denied further US access to the Peshawar airfield. It's a terrifying reminder of how these superpower intelligence games can violently drag allied nations right to the brink of war. If Pakistan hadn't wisely stepped back there, the Cold War might have turned hot right on their borders. Section 5. Redrawing the Cold War, the Spy Exchange, and the Aftermath. Fast forward to February 10, 1962. Power's 10-year sentence is cut short. He walks across the freezing, foggy Glina K Bridge in Berlin, exchanged for captured Soviet spy Rudolf Abel. So Powers finally makes it home. He was welcomed back by the CIA, but he returned to a deeply, deeply suspicious American public. His public stature at the time was just devastatingly low. In fact, the era's media, specifically the New York Sunday Herald Tribune, openly asked a genuinely chilling question. They asked, why didn't Powers use the poison needle he had on hand, or the pistol he had with him? It perfectly encapsulates the absolutely brutal nature of the Cold War, right? This terrifying expectation that an individual caught in the crosshairs of these massive superpowers should simply erase themselves rather than survive. It's a lot to think about. Thank you for joining me for this explainer.